So please stick around to the end where I rank all the films from the film that I least like all the way to the one that I most like. Now, based on the other reviews, if you've seen them, you probably can guess where each film lies, but I still encourage y'all to kind of watch to the end so you can kind of get my overall thoughts on the series. The other thing is please watch those other reviews if you haven't seen those. I go into more detail about each of the films. Also, I put a lot of work into them, and I think they're really great in my personal opinion. So I definitely think you should check out those reviews, and of course, check out the Small Axe Anthology Series. Greetings everyone, my name is Dr. Jason Freeman and I'd like to welcome you all to my channel. In this video, I review the 5th film of the Small Axe Anthology Series titled Education. This film stars Kenyah Sandy and Sharlyne Whyte and is directed by Steve McQueen. I'm going to tell you what I liked about the film, I'm going to tell you what I didn't like about the film, then I'm going to say whether I think you should see the film or just skip it. Now, at any point, feel free to click the notification bell or subscribe to my channel to get more content. So without further ado, let's begin. So Education is about a young man by the name of Kingsley Smith. I believe he is around 12 years old, who was basically kicked out of his, I'm assuming, private school. They're all wearing uniforms, so I'm not sure if they wear uniforms in British public schools or not. But basically, he's kicked out of his school, and essentially he's sent to a school for kids with learning disabilities, or sorry, kids who have been labeled with learning disabilities, and I'm assuming also behavioral problems, though that's not made clear in the film. Now, the film features Kingsley, his mother, Agnes, his sister, as well as his dad. They're the family. And then it's his experiences when he's in the school system and some of the struggles around some of the issues where there's discrimination against Afro-Caribbean people in the schools in Britain. So what do I like about the film? Well, first and foremost, just like with the other films, it's beautifully shot. Steve McQueen is a master when it comes to telling stories with shots. He kind of focuses in on faces, body language, and you kind of get just a feel for what's going on by what he's kind of shooting, what he has on camera. It still has that same kind of grainy, like almost like Super 8 kind of film, which works for this time frame. I'm assuming the 1970s, maybe early 1980s. I'm sure they might have given a clue for what year it was in there, but it doesn't really matter. You get the idea. It's this time period, where you're having a lot of changes in Britain, the Windrush generation, and some of the kind of struggles they face trying to integrate into British society. Now, along with the other films in the series, the acting is amazing. So we spend most of our times with Kingsley, played by Kenyah Sandy. He does a great job. Also, Agnes Smith, the mom, played by Sharlyne Whyte. She's great. The sister's great. The sister is played by, let me just double check here. I'm gonna edit this out, by the way. The sister is played by Tamara Lawrence. That took way too long. But they did a great job. And the dad, the guy who played the dad, I can't think of his name. I'm not going to look for that. But basically, he isn't given very much to do. He has one kind of scene where he gets kind of emotional. But for the most part, it's those three. And then there's the other characters. There's another actress who plays Hazel, who kind of comes in, who's also really good. But this is the acting is really great, and I'm really enjoying kind of how Steve McQueen deals with actors and how presents actors. Except for one group, which we're going to talk about again later. I've talked about them every one. I'm going to talk about them again. Come on, Steve McQueen, you got to do better with this one group of actors. But when it comes to this family, great job. And I did want to mention this one scene in particular where Kingsley is asked by his mother to read. And he's struggling. I'm assuming he has dyslexia based on kind of his inability to read. So basically, he's a very bright kid, as they mentioned. It's pretty clear. Again, they do a good job kind of saying how bright he is and showing it. But again, he's having struggles reading, and so I'm assuming he has dyslexia. And there's one scene where he's kind of forced to read, and this is kind of alluded to, kind of built up over the film. So it's another, again, it's great. Some of the writing is really good in this film. And there's some other stuff I'm gonna talk about later, but some of the writing is really good. But they build up to this one scene. It's kind of like the crescendo, and it's this very emotional scene. To me, it's the best scene of the film. There's one scene at the very end, literally the very end, that I also really loved. But this one scene is so emotional. Kenyah, who plays Kingsley, does a great job. The sister, the mom, those three are powerhouse. They did a great job in this film, and that one scene really encapsulates it and really shows off their ability and kind of. And I'm not saying they carry the film, but they really add a lot of heart to this film. The other thing I really liked was the messaging in the second half of the film. Now I'm not going to go into any more detail. I don't want to spoil anything. But that the message in the second half of the film, if you're into Black empowerment, it was perfect at the very end of the film. Now, one thing I've criticized Alistair Siddons, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but one thing I've criticized him about is some of the pontificating that happens, and that's in this film too. So I'll talk about that when I get to some of the things I don't like. But what they're saying is so important, in my opinion. I think I can get over the pontificating. I wish it was delivered in a better, more natural way, but the actual what is said, and honestly, I don't know if that's him or McQueen. They co-wrote the film, but whoever did that, and I've been critical of Siddons. I'll still be critical of him in the second half. I've been kind of hard on him, but the idea is if that was him, then he did a great job with the messaging, and I can get past the pontificating because of what is actually being said. Now, what didn't I like? If you are a white person in this film, or most of these films, I'll get the one exception was the I think solicitor lawyer in the first one that was representing some of the Mangrove Nine. If you are a white person in these films, you are being presented as an evil SOB. Pardon my language, I probably should have avoided one, but evil MF if you're being presented. And this film was probably as bad, if not worse, than the other ones. Every white person is racist. Every white person is mean. This one woman teacher talks about telling them to go swing in the trees, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, what is this? Like, I mean, I get this racism. I get it was a different time. I get this stuff still happens now. But again, even if people are more covert racist and saying this stuff in private, these people are saying this to these actors' face. These characters' faces, and I just don't see that to the degree that they're showing this in the film. Again, to me, it comes off, and again, I love these films. I think they're important, but it comes off as propaganda. When you only show the other side or the white characters as evil monsters, other than that one who's representing the Mangrove Nine, it's problematic. And so I'm going to keep watching Steve McQueen films. But if this is if this kind of keeps happening, it's a problem. It's not great. Again, it's fine to show racism in your films, but if you're going to show all your white characters as racist, give me some balance. Give me something else. I mean, and I don't want to hear anybody say, well, if that's the reality. No, look, there is diversity in opinions. There's diversity within the Black community, diversity in the white community. That's just how it is. There were white people who fought in the Civil War against slavery. There were white people who supported it. There were Black people who were fine with the system. There were Black people who obviously, like Frederick Douglass, who fought against it. You can't give a broad brush to any group of people and say they're all good or all bad. I'm not saying McQueen believes that. I'm saying the way he's presenting it in the film, it shows it. It shows pretty much all the white people, from the principal to the music teacher to his first teacher who calls Kingsley a blockhead, to the white woman teacher who talks about swinging. Like, all those white people are kind of shown as evil monsters, and they're the majority. It doesn't really show a lot of the balance. There's one white male man who says hi to the mom. He's not shown as evil. And then there's one white bus driver who does something nice for Kingsley. Other than that, all the white people are trash. In the film, obviously, I'm not saying. But in the film, they're presented that way. And I think that's something I just don't like about these films. Another thing I didn't like was that watching that first half of the film was a chore. It was slow and tragic. One thing after another. Again, as I mentioned, the evil white people that were, how white people presented in the film. So that was the big problem. Every single white person had it out for Kingsley, including his friend, his white friend. And then it was just slow, and it just this kind of descent into horror. So it just wasn't fun. Now I get the thing with a film like this. It's not supposed to be fun. I get it. But even with these films, it was just so slow and plodding, and just so kind of just so not methodical, but just kind of it just didn't really capture me. And so had I not been, if I wasn't reviewing this film, I would not have made it through that first half. I would have stopped, which is very different than the other three films. Sorry, the first three films of the series, which I enjoyed. Even though I'm critical of Mangrove, I enjoyed the Mangrove. I enjoyed Mangrove. And it's one of those things. It wasn't the best edited film, but I still enjoyed it. I mean, there were moments I got kind of lost, but overall, especially when they got to the court scene in Mangrove, it was great. But with this film, it was really slow and plodding up until Hazel shows up. When Hazel shows up, it's a different movie. But that first half just was brutal. The other issue, as was the case with the other films, was it jumps around a lot. It's one of those things with the editing. It's just so, like, you're one thing, you get this one scene, and all of a sudden you're doing something completely different, and it's completely unrelated. As if they kind of took the film, they tried to make a bunch of shots and kind of just put them together haphazardly. So again, the film is shot beautifully. McQueen does a great job telling stories with shots, but how the film is put together is just is wonky. And I suspect that I'm not gonna say that. I suspect that the film that I like the best, I'm not gonna say the name of it, I want to wait till the rankings. I suspect the film I like the best also had that same issue, but I enjoyed the film so much I kind of ignored it. But with the film that's kind of plodding and brutal to watch, the jumping around was just discombobulating, and I didn't enjoy that part. And again, it's throughout the film, but that first half had a lot of that, and they did get a little bit better towards the end. Now, one positive thing I'm going to say, and this has been a critique of the other films, that's why I'm putting it here. Basically, I did not need subtitles for this film. Part of it was that the family, they don't really have an accent. I mean, they have accents, but the language or the dialect is very clear. Like I didn't have an issue understanding any of the family. And then the son, so Kingsley and his sister, they're very much they're British. They're kind of like Alex Wheatle. So I had no issues understanding Alex Wheatle either, except for various points when he was trying to. Actually, no, I didn't really have issues. I could understand him pretty well. But same thing with the kids, and the mom and the dad. The little dad has to say there is clear as well. The only kind of places I might have had a little bit of problems was there's one scene with a lot of the parents, the Afro-Caribbean parents, but all of them, even the ones with the thick accents, everything they said was clear. I think part of the issue was, like, for example, with Alex Wheatle, is that some of them, they use a lot of slang and a lot of like colloquial language that I'm not familiar with, and so I have to see it. And once I see it, I can figure out, okay, so that's what they're talking about there. But when I'm hearing it, it's very it's very confusing to me. But when I see it, it's a lot clearer. But this film didn't have that issue at all, so you don't need subtitles for this film. Now, so you see it or skip it. Now, as I was watching the first half of the film, I was solid skip it for a good chunk of that. Then Hazel shows up. Hazel played by, Naomi Ackie. I'm hoping I'm saying that right, Naomi Ackie. When Hazel shows up, it's a whole different film. So the film picks up at that point. And so watching from Hazel on, I went from skip it to see it. It's not as strong as see it as it was for some of the other films, which I'm going to talk about later. But it was definitely a see it. Now, if you could skip that first half, I think that's fine. They settled the characters a little bit in that first half. So coming into it from Hazel on, it'll still be a little jarring as to who people are, but I think you probably can watch from Hazel when she first is introduced to the end and still be fine. And it's a much more enjoyable film. Like, if I watch the film again, I'll probably try to start with the beginning, but if I'm like, I can't do this, I'll probably skip straight to Hazel, and then the rest of it's fine. So this is definitely a see it. Again, it has McQueen's amazing shots, the great acting. The story's good. Again, that first half is a struggle, but once you get to that second half, the story's really good, and the story is really a positive story overall. A story that I think needs to be told, which is why I changed to see it. Now, once you get to the story in the second half, that part where I think is important, then there's definitely a see it. But that first half, man, it's a struggle. So overall, I would say I like the film, and it really is saved by that second half, in particular by how they act, especially like with the mom, her change, and again Hazel's introduction, and Alistair was good throughout. So not Alistair, Kingsley's good throughout. But yeah, that first half is a problem. But again, it's a good overall. It's a good film. Now let me go ahead and get to my rankings. So I'll just kind of go through each of the rankings and kind of talk about why I ranked it where it was. And so I'm gonna start with the bottom, the film I liked the least. And if you've seen that review, it's clearly Alex Wheatle. So Alex Wheatle was the one I liked the least. I did not like the main character. I thought the writing was weak. And this, again, for the first 43 minutes of that film, it doesn't really get to what the film is supposed to be about. So Alex Wheatle is the one I would say, it's not my favorite. And so that's my least favorite of the film of the five. Now, number 4 is Education. So I'm not going to say too much more about it. But again, the second half of the film really saves it. So I would definitely say, again, if you watch it, you can watch the whole thing. But if you don't want to just waste your time, watch from Hazel. So kind of fast forward and look for when Naomi Ackie comes in, and then go from there. And that's a solid film, that second half. So my number 3 film is the only Alistair Siddons film that I really liked. Again, I did like the second half of Education, but I really liked Mangrove. The reason, because I think it was a really important story to tell. Now, again, my big issue with Alistair Siddons and why all 3 of his films are the lower ranked films is because I don't think he really does a good job with natural speech, especially when it comes to people who have political or ideological positions. So what he does, he has them stop essentially and give these long, elaborate speeches that obviously would be something that someone would like write and memorize like in front of a podium, not when in the casual conversation like you would have with someone at a dinner table. And so it's one of those things. The exposition dumps. It's just like we're gonna give this ideology and we're gonna put it out there. Now again, I like the actual ideas of education, the way, because I think it was really important what was said, but it still was said in a way that didn't feel like natural speech. And again, if I'm middle of the road or coming from the opposite side, it's all gonna sound like propaganda to me. And I think it's better to show not tell, and it doesn't really show. It's more like, let's sit here, member of the Black Panther or person or activist. Let me just give you the whole spiel of the big problem that we've been dealing with for these last couple decades and say it in this big high-minded speech. And again, to me it's just eye rolling. And again, Mangrove is good. I like Mangrove, especially in the trial scene. That was powerful. The acting in that is amazing. Those actors did a great job. But overall, it's hurt, I think, by that the way that all the pontificating that you get from some of the characters. So my number 2 film on the list is Red, White, and Blue. This film is directed by Steve McQueen and is written by Courtney Newland. So Courtney Newland's his films are in my top 2. That's a very talented brother. I definitely think he should get more opportunities to write. But I love Red, White, and Blue, and John Boyega does an amazing job. I also reviewed the film Woman King. I'll put a little card up here so you can kind of see if you want to see that review. But in that film, he's not really given much to do. But even in that film, even if there's little parts, he's great. But in Red, White, and Blue, you really see his full talents on display. A great actor. Definitely going to be getting awards for years to come. And so with him, also with also with Stephen Toussaint, who also does a great job in that film, who I just realized is playing Corlys Valerian on House of the Dragon, was his I've been watching. I love House of the Dragon. My favorite show on TV right now, other than Atlanta. I didn't know it was him. He looks different. He's obviously older than he was when he did Red, White, and Blue. But again, amazing actor. I love them in both places. So, but yeah, Steve Toussaint, John Boyega, they do an amazing job in this film. And it's still, I mentioned this in the review, the auntie that basically curses him out, curses Kenneth. Kenneth, the guy that Steve Toussaint is playing, curses him out and sends him on. I love her too. But yeah, that's a great number two. So that Red, White, and Blue, amazing film. Really loved it. And last and certainly not least, my favorite film of the series is Lovers Rock. I love that film. I would sing his praises to the high heavens. A great film, great acting. The music is amazing. The atmosphere is amazing. It's just an amazing film. And definitely, I could tell it was done. I mean, all of them are done for the heart, but this one is more of a heart film, where it's more about the emotions, it's more about the feelings and nostalgia of being in that time. Where all the other films are trying to push a political ideology, this one does not. This one is more, let's give you an experience, and it's quite an experience to have. So I definitely, of all the films, that's definitely, when I go back to rewatch them, that's number one, easily. And I'll probably watch that multiple times before I get to the other ones. Now, Mangrove is good. Mangrove is something I would probably show in one of my classes. I'm teaching a course called Blacks in Great Britain, which is what my whole YouTube channel is based on. So that's a film I could see having my students watch. I recommend probably education too, just to give them a feel for the issues, because the second half, by the way, the issues with the education system. But yeah, but number one, again, Lovers Rock is more about the experience. It's fun. It's a film I could definitely sit back and watch with other people just for enjoyment. So that's why that's definitely my number one. Now, there's one sexual assault scene in the film that's disturbing, but again, it's part of. It's still, to me, it's the truth of the time, truth of the experience of what was going on at the time. And again, they also have the evil white people trope that we've seen in other films. So again, but there's so few white people in that one that it doesn't become overpowering. There's one big scene that towards the end that kind of, it's one of those things like, you didn't have to do that. Like, I get it, to get the power dynamic. You didn't have to have him basically be an a-hole. But they did it. Again, it is what it is. But definitely, I love Lovers Rock, and definitely would suggest, if you're gonna watch the films, if you're gonna do it you don't care about doing it in the order that they were presented in the series, I would do that one first. That's great. That's the fun one. And I would, again, going back, I'll go and say I would skip Alex Wheatle. There's no reason. It just is not my favorite. So. Now, if you found this review helpful, please like this video, subscribe to my channel. Also, please share this video with anyone you think either wants to see the Small Axe Anthology Series or might find this review helpful. Thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.